Yep. Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk, and it is the weekend. We have all of the top stories throughout this past week, all conveniently located in one collection of videos. We hope you enjoy it. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Crime Talk. So, prosecutors in Idaho have submitted the disputed DNA evidence to the court that the stabbing suspect, Bryan Kohberger, once handed over to him and his attorneys in hopes to obviously try to defend his case and challenge the DNA as it relates to the multiple counts of murder in the first degree as well as burglary for the November 2022 massacre of University of Idaho students. Now, prosecutors say that the police used investigative genetic genealogy, this family genealogy taken from some items that were discarded at Bryan Kohberger's house. They used it from his father. They traced it back to Bryan Kohberger, and then they obtained probable cause affidavit to get Bryan Kohberger's DNA. And obviously that's a problem for Bryan Kohberger because his DNA is apparently found on the little button here of a knife sheath from a K-bar. And yes, that's right, your friendly local criminal defense attorney who just happened to serve in the Marine Corps happened to have a K-bar that he had, and there's that little button. That little button that's actually pretty hard to hit could cause a transfer of DNA. Now, what if we told you a lot about any criminal case? You look at it and say, what piece of evidence needs to disappear to make this case go away? Well, in Bryan Kohberger's case, the worst piece of evidence is the DNA. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, it was obviously planted by the police. Everybody went into that particular apartment. Okay, all arguments that can be made. All arguments that can be made. However, the criminal defense attorneys know that that DNA is a problem because that sheath, the sheath itself, the little leather piece with the little button, was found underneath one of the victims in the apartment. How did that get there? And remember, although the prosecution just simply says, hey, it's there, we're just giving you the facts, they don't have to explain exactly how it got there. And if the defense can't explain exactly how it got there, it looks bad. So I know a lot of people say, oh, he's been framed, they planted it. But remember, they had the DNA evidence before they knew who Bryan Kohberger even was. They couldn't get a match in their CODIS system for that. So anyway, the defense wants to have all of the documents that the FBI used to create this DNA family tree, basically, and go from there. Prosecution says, you're not entitled to it. Judge says, I'll take a look at it. I will decide what is relevant and if you get anything. Because remember, just because it's not necessarily admissible doesn't mean that it is not discoverable. There's a big, big difference. And frankly, the court should not get involved too much by saying you're not entitled to this because it becomes an appellate issue. Give it all to them. It may not be relevant. Give it to them. And you never know what a creative criminal defense attorney can do as it relates to that information that the prosecution just doesn't want to turn over. So anyway, the prosecutor submitted a motion saying, Judge, we released all this IGG information and anything that we had within our care, custody, and control, which obviously includes the FBI. So now the fight begins over whether it should be disclosed, and that's been a sticking point with the defense as they demand more information through the discovery process. Now the judge, John Judge, gave Kohberger's defense team a minor victory back in October, ordering the prosecution to share that evidence with him for an in-camera review, which is simply a private inspection of the documents by the court to determine if something is relevant. Now, Judge is expected to examine the evidence and decide how much of it, if any, should be shared with the defense. As noted, the state's argument is that the IGG investigation is wholly irrelevant since it was not used in obtaining any warrants and will not be used at trial by the prosecution. And the judge wrote that nonetheless, Kohberger is entitled to view at least some of that IGG information in preparing his defense, even if it may ultimately be found to be irrelevant. Good call, Judge. That's the way it's supposed to be. Prosecution, once again, playing games. Just give it everything. Give everything you got. Why are you playing games? That's the biggest thing that prosecutors do that creates doubt. When they don't turn anything over, they play games, and it looks like they're hiding stuff. Turn it all over. Bottom line, please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. How can Lorie Vail win her case in Arizona? Well, Lorie Vail is set to appear in court on Thursday to be arraigned on 2 murder charges relating to the shooting death of her 4th husband and an attempt on the life of her niece's ex-husband. Now, apparently, court records indicate now that they've already set or pre-cleared a trial date, and that is tentatively scheduled to begin on April 4th. Now, that's according to court records. There's also a pretrial conference date set for January 18th and February 21st and March 28th. Now, it's probably very unlikely that these dates are actually going to stand. However, as you may recall, Lorie Vail was unwilling to waive her speedy trial rights in Idaho. And let's be frank, that had there not been the 10-month delay in competency issues and delays attributable to being joined with her husband, Chad Daybell, there's no way the prosecution would have been ready to proceed in 6 months. Well, Lorie Vail, if she does the same thing in Arizona and says, let's go, the prosecution may have some trouble. So if the prosecution keeps it simple and simply focuses on the death of Charles Vail, where we've all heard the 911 calls as well as the videos of the scene, and Lorie Vail is very nonchalant about her husband being killed, etc., and her brother, Alex Cox, being the one that did it, acting like it was no big deal. If they keep it focused on that, they're going to have a shot. However, if the prosecution overtries the case, which they always do, they're going to want to get into all the stuff in Idaho for 404B evidence. Now, why may this play into Lorie Vail's favor? Because the trial of her husband, Chad Daybell, also starts on April 1st. Lorie Vail starts on the 4th. A lot of the same witnesses would be necessary for all the 404B evidence. So, Lorie Vail, her way of winning is to simply go forward, keep that original trial date, and move forward. It's not that complicated of a case. The prosecution, if they want to get into the 404B issues related to Idaho and the death of JJ and Tylee, or Tammy as well, guess what? It's going to be more complicated because it's taking place at the same time. So we'll have to wait and see what they do, but that's the way Lorie Vail has a shot of winning. Now, don't get me wrong. Am I a fan of Lorie Vail? No, I'm not. I think she's obviously a very horrible human being and is probably where she needs to be for the rest of her life, undoubtedly where she needs to be. But she's also entitled to due process, and, well, we're going to talk about it. And for those who aren't familiar with the Lorie Vail case, Lorie Vail faces conspiracy charges in both crimes in which she were allegedly carried out by her brother, Alex Cox, before his death in December of 2019, where he's reportedly passed away of natural causes. A lot of coincidence of a lot of dead people around Lorie Vail, is there not? Well, Vail was also convicted in Idaho earlier this year of the murder and conspiracy charges regarding the death of her 2 children, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee, along with her fifth husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. She was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences with no chance of parole and obviously is appealing the conviction. And Chad Daybell, the fifth husband, his trial begins on April 1st of 2024 on the same charges that Lorie Vail was convicted of. Now, Alex Cox was also reportedly involved in the death of the children there in Idaho as well. And as we brought you the story last week, Lorie Vail was extradited from Idaho last week and brought to the Maricopa County Jail there in Phoenix on a little 18-hour road trip. According to reports from the sheriff's office, apparently Lorie Vail was very chatty during the drive, probably trying to befriend the deputy so she could plan her escape. Anyway, according to documents that were unsealed after the first appearance, on November 30th, Vail and Cox are accused of conspiring to kill Charles Vail, who was shot and killed on July 19th. Shortly after, Vail moved out of their home, and just weeks before, well, she married Chad Daybell, and the children went missing. What a coincidence. Anyway, Alex Cox told the deputies that he killed Vail in self-defense. Obviously, the police ultimately came to the conclusion that that was not the case, but Alex Cox had passed away and will never be charged with the death of Charles Vail. Now, police previously released the body cam footage showing Vail reporting to detectives that he was concerned about his wife's fanatical religious views and was worried she might try to hurt him or the children. He made several police reports to that effect, but really nothing was done. The second charge concerns an attempt on the life of Brandon Boudreaux outside his home in Gilbert, Arizona in October of 2019. He was not hurt. So let me know, do you think Lorie Vail has a shot at this trial, or do you think she's going to crash and burn and go down in flames? She's got one shot. Time is on her side if she pressures the prosecution. The prosecution will get it done. The question just depends upon how much evidence they want to bring in against her. Lorie Vail. That's right. She appeared in a Phoenix courtroom this morning for an arraignment. Now, this was a week after she was extradited to Arizona from Idaho. And obviously, we know Vail has been sentenced to multiple life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole back in Idaho back in July of 2023 for the murders of her 2 youngest children, JJ and Tylee, as well as killing current husband's number 5's wife, Tammy Daybell. Well, now she's facing murder charges for the death that kind of began everything in Arizona. Vail is accused of conspiring in the fatal shooting of her 4th husband, Charles Vail, in Chandler, Arizona, and planning the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, her niece's ex-husband, in Gilbert, Arizona, back in 2019. Now, investigators allege that Vail's late brother, Alex Cox, was the suspect who actually did the killings following his sister's determination that the victims were dark spirits. Yes, it's kind of where it all began. So in court, Vail stated to the presiding judge that her name was Lorie Vail Daybell. We're going to continue to call her Vail just to keep the two distinguished. Anyway, she pled not guilty to the charge that had been filed against her. The prosecutor, also present for the arraignment, and said the cases are both first-degree murder cases, and they're very complex. And he wants the currently scheduled trial date to begin, or that's set on April 4th, to be continued. Well, the judge who heard the case today for an arraignment said that she was going to keep the trial date and that the prosecutor can take that matter up with the trial court that's actually going to hear the case. So what have we said here several times on Crime Talk? Remember, the prosecutor, when they bring a case, should be ready to go try that case within the speedy trial time allotted. We saw that in Lorie Vail's case in Idaho. The prosecution was not ready. And when the prosecutor is already asking for an April trial date to be continued, it's telling me they have issues, like we discussed on our Tuesday night live program. That's right. That trial is set for the exact same time as Chad Daybell. Do you think there's going to be some witnesses that need to appear at both? Yes, I do. And when the prosecutor is looking out for the defendant's best interests, be afraid. Be very, very afraid. Now, we'll see. I'm sure the prosecution could muster up their resources and get this case to trial on April 4th. And like we talked about last Tuesday, that's probably the best shot that Lorie Vail would have in prevailing on this particular case. Anyway, in the meantime, the initial pretrial conference has been scheduled for January 18th. We'll go ahead and put that on our calendar as well so we can bring you those proceedings as well. Crumbley. That's right. The Michigan high school shooter, Ethan Crumbley, has been sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of 4 students back in 2021. The now 17-year-old ran riot through Oxford High School in the state in November of 2021, killing 4 and injuring another 7. Now, Judge Kwame Rowe said that Crumbley methodically walked through the school, picking and choosing who was going to live or die. Well, ultimately, students Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Julia, Tate Meyer, and Justin Schilling were all killed in that rampage. 6 students and a teacher were also wounded. Now, he was convicted ultimately of 24 felonies in connection with the school shooting, including murder and terrorism. According to the prosecutors, this case marks the first time the defendant was charged and convicted of terrorism resulting from a mass shooting. Now, in a turn of events, the 17-year-old addressed family members of the victims and those affected by his rampage before being sentenced. He stated, "What I did, my actions were because of what I chose to do. I could not stop myself. I did not diminish my ability to anyone that could have stopped me. They did not know, and I did not tell them what I planned to do, so they are not at fault for what I've done. I am a really bad person. I've done terrible things no one should ever do. I have lied. I've hurt people. That's what I've done. Whatever sentence it is, I do plan to be better. I will change. It may now show, it may not now show, but I am trying. All I want is for the people I hurt, for those to have a little final sense of culpability, that justice has been served in any capacity. Any sentence they ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me. I want them to be happy, to feel secure. I do not want them to worry another day. I am really sorry. I cannot give it back." Well, there you go. Sounds like he was trying to help his parents out a little bit there in his statement. So defense attorney Paulette Michael Lofton argued that Mr. Crumbley deserves an opportunity to have parole at some point in his life after his sick brain is fixed through counseling and rehabilitation. But through many hearings and through sentencing, expert witnesses have testified that Mr. Crumbley has a slim chance that he could ever be rehabilitated behind bars. Now, in a journal that Crumbley wrote about his desire to watch students suffer and the likelihood that he would spend his life in prison, he made a video on the eve of the shooting declaring what he would do the next day. Crumbley and his parents met with school staff on the day of the shooting after a teacher noticed violent drawings, but no one checked his backpack for a gun, and he was allowed to stay at school. Well, like their son, Jennifer and James Crumbley, the parents are locked up in the county jail, and they are awaiting a trial on involuntary manslaughter charges, accused of making a gun accessible at a home and neglecting their son's mental health. I have criticized the charges against the parents, but I get people's frustration with it, and more than likely the Crumbleys will be convicted at trial, and it will be up to an appellate court to decide if that was the appropriate charging decision in the future. We'll have to wait and see. But at least we know Ethan Crumbley will never, ever be free again.